Welcome to another episode of Marketing Murder Mystery. I'm your host, Michael Graham, here at the Millennium Agency with the lovely and talented Linda Fanaris.
Hello, Michael Graham.
And with the sweater-wearing but otherwise not particularly useful Rob Atkinson. Rob?
Thanks, Boomer.
That's okay, Boomer, to you. As Steve Buscemi says, how are you doing, fellow kids? Okay, and today we have a plethora of victims and a plethora of survivors from the marketing carnage. Some of the victims' names are Harris and Williamson and Booker and Castro, and some of the survivors' names are improbably Bloomberg and Steyer. We are talking about the power of marketing as displayed in political marketing in the 2020 campaign, and the lessons that you can learn for marketing any product from the way that the super smart people who market politicians. Because you got to figure, Linda, if you can sell a politician, you can sell just about anything, right? And one of the things that jumps out about this marketing environment we are in is, I believe, Rob, that it is a display of the brute force of the power of marketing, which is why we have the survivors and the victims that we do. And so a little background, because I used to run political campaigns back in the day. On paper, Kamala Harris, the perfect nominee for the Democratic Party. She ticked all the boxes. She's gone. On paper, Cory Booker, terrific candidate. And by the way, I because I write about the race, I've seen Senator Booker at several venues. He's a great speech giver. People loved him. Out of the race. Meanwhile, Tom Steyer, and I'm not to be mean-spirited to Mr. Steyer, who's been very politically very successful in the private sector, not a fireball of political charisma. He made the debate stage for the Iowa debate. Michael Bloomberg, polling shows and has consistently shown, is the least popular Democrat among Democrats of the people who are running. He's managed to break, depending on what polls you believe, into fourth place, maybe third place nationally. Rob, how could it be that these politically talented people are gone? We're doing the autopsy on them, and yet these less than popular from political standpoint people are still in the race?
It's amazing. If you look at polls in South Carolina, some polls have Steyer in second place at 15%, which is just incredible. Mm-hmm. A guy who nobody knows a few months ago is now in second place in South Carolina. And it has to do with everything about money. He spent over $100 million on television ads so far. And to put that in perspective, Biden spent $3 million.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just incredible the amount of money he's spending to get his name out there.
Now, to be fair, the Biden campaign has been boosting its spending as the day, and you're going to see those numbers pop later by the time people hear this podcast, but no doubt about it. And Michael Bloomberg is even beyond that. Early in January, former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, who's running in the neighboring state of New Hampshire, announced a $2 million buy. By the time he announced that buy, Michael Bloomberg had literally spent 100 times more money. Michael Bloomberg has spent more than $200 million on advertising. And if you look at polling of Super Tuesday states where he's targeting, Michael Bloomberg is in the mix. He's in the hunt. Deval Patrick, alas, is the Bluto-Blutarski of the race at the time, 0.0. So what does that tell you about marketing? And what is it that they're doing in their marketing that's making them competitive?
I would almost say that it's not what they're doing in the marketing as much as just the sheer volume of times it's run. And you look at like a Bloomberg spot, he's spending, as we said, spending over $200 million. One day alone on recent Saturday, he spent $825,000 on Facebook just to get his word out. So, I don't think a lot of people could say, oh, yeah, that's what Bloomberg stands for, but they might know who Bloomberg is. And it's the same with my kids, right? So Tom Steyer has gone from, oh, I hate that ad, to actually saying, he's got a point about that. And that's why he's seen the surge in the polls, especially in South Carolina, is because that message, after drumbeating it over and over and over again, is finally kind of sinking in and baking into the public.
Because those of us who've done marketing, Linda, have sat with clients who have said to us, oh, I don't need to spend money. Or I'm going to spend it on targets. Donald Trump likes to point out that he was outspent in the the 2016 race, and he was outspent, but he also didn't win as many actual votes, popular votes, as Hillary Clinton did. The money had an impact. Aren't we seeing that in certain cases there just simply isn't a way around volume, that you just have to put the points up in a TV buy, or you have to put the clicks up in a social media buy?
Yep. I mean, I would say definitely Steyer is an excellent example. He started early and he has spent a lot of money. I mean, I can't even get through a YouTube clip without actually seeing his commercial 2 or 3 times. So it's absolutely amazing the amount of money that he's spending. I do want to make a point though, because he has been running for so long, and I don't know how Rob feels about this, but his messaging has gotten better. But initially, it took me a while to figure out, like, what's your point? Like, what is your actual point?
Well, it was distracting, the belt he wore. I don't know if you've seen it,
Yeah.
but it looks like the Partridge Family parked
It's
on
true.
his waist,
Yes.
and it's really annoying. And I was so glad when the commercials changed and he wasn't wearing that belt or wearing a sweater like me, where it covered the belt.
Right.
I believe that what you're seeing is, I mean, I don't want to lose the easy forest for the individual trees, which is there is power, there's marketing power, there is self-fulfilling marketing power out from a pure brute force marketing push. You put your name on a bunch of stuff, you put your face out, and then the fact that your marketing starts feeding interest into, I've seen all these ads. What is that about? I blew them off the first 73 times because I don't think you're selling a product that I'm interested in. And I don't want to move past that lesson, because it's a lesson people try to sneak past. Now, you can do a lot with a little. So the classic example of that is when I was doing political work, I worked with a guy who studied under a guy in California who's kind of known for bringing political marketing into the then 20th century. And in California, the water commissioner race is a huge race. And there was this guy who was like an assistant or whatever that everyone knew was going to run when the seat came up. This other guy came to my friend's mentor and said, I want to run, but I don't have a chance. He said, don't worry about it. Write me a check and go home, which was by the way, as a political consultant, is my best advice I ever gave anybody. Just give me the check. You just go. We'll take care of it. So they couldn't compete with name ID. They couldn't compete on money. So what the consultant did, the marketing guy did, is he found out how the guaranteed lock candidate got to work every day. And he bought 3 billboards. One where the guy got on the interstate in California, one where the guy got off the interstate, and one across from the guy's building. The filing period opens, his client files, the other guy doesn't file. The filing period closed. The guy never even got in the race, because every day he would drop, and the billboard's very simple. 3 cheers for, I forget the guy, Joe Smith, I forget the guy's name, but 3 cheers for Joe Smith. 3 cheers for Joe Smith. So the filing period opens and closes, and his friends all say to him, we thought for sure you were going to be the next water commissioner. Why didn't you run? He said, are you kidding me? That Joe Smith, he was everywhere. And that was the powerful use of targeted marketing. But those stories feed a myth that you can work around reach and points.
You're right, frequency is important. It's funny when you look at all of the TV ad buys. In 1 week alone recently, in fact, right before the debates, there was 48,000 political ads run nationwide. Of those political ads, Bloomberg had 23,000 of them just to himself. All the other candidates combined made up the difference. I mean, talk about
That's
frequency.
incredible.
It is incredible. But I do wonder, though, what that message is going to be moving forward, and people are actually capturing it like the good old days when Ronald Reagan ran his ad of New Day in America, Morning America. That had an incredible, impactful moment on people that actually, the emotion made you want to go vote for someone because it made you feel good about that choice. I haven't seen any ads that do that, even with the frequency.
Right. I mean, definitely, like when we were talking earlier about Steyer and the frequency that he had behind his ad and early on, I mean, I would say that at least he was able to lay a foundation that he was running. I don't know that people really had a full understanding of exactly what he was running for, but possibly, and it would be interesting to really find out what the marketing strategy was behind that, because over time, you would see so many spots. You're like, I'm getting tired of seeing these spots. I'm getting tired of seeing these spots. What do they mean? Now he is still in the running, and he's You know, he's starting to make some sort of mark. People are starting to listen. So I guess the question is was the initial strategy just to get his name out there in large volume in a high frequency way? And then once a period of time went by, okay, now let's get into some key messaging and try to hone in on something that people can really connect with.
Which is why I think that there's so much to learn from political marketing, because political marketing is such a weird thing. You know, Coca-Cola has been around for forever. When you start a brand, whatever it is, you know, a brand of mayonnaise, whatever, you hope you're going to be around forever. Political marketing, by definition, is specifically a campaign. It starts where your product is. In the case of Tom Steyer, a few people knew who he was. If you were active in the impeach Trump movement, he started that movement. If you're active in a environmental group called Next Gen America, he was involved. But most people didn't know. He also knew when he started, and Michael Bloomberg, they all know, that there's a certain point where you need to be somewhere. So when you bring up the point, Linda, was he just telling people he was? Yes, he was identifying the product. There's a product available. Isn't that where every marketing place starts? Even at a company that's been around for 30 years, but they're just starting a marketing issue, they have to start with, hey, I exist. Yes. And here's what I am. Yeah. And the other thing you mentioned is targeting the market, Rob. And what do we know about voters? If you're old, you vote. If you're a homeowner, you're more likely to vote. If you're a parent, you're more likely to vote. So you know that thing, you know your market. And then the third thing that I think sticks out, that's a lesson to be learned about marketing, and this is something I think marketers miss, people miss a lot of time in the marketing, is what do you want the person who gets my message to do? In politics, it's easy. I want you to show up at a building on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. You know exactly what you want them to do. Isn't it the case that oftentimes people start a marketing push and they don't have a clear message of, here's what I want you to do?
Right. It's true. Absolutely. I mean, you know, in fact, we've been doing some advocacy campaigns recently, and we learned that it has to be down to one thing you have to tell the person in a spot, because you can't expect them to do multiple things.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, grab your neighbor and go and vote. They won't do that. They'll just go to their neighbor's house and you'll never see them at the polling place.
Right.
So yeah, it has to be crystal clear, and the messaging has to be really good. And to your point earlier about the messaging, especially like on Tom Steyer, where he says, you know, I could take on the president on the economy and win. I'm not sure what a win even looks like.
And what does that mean?
I mean, what is a Dow 40,000?
I know. Wow.
I don't even see how. So you know, when you make those claims, you really have to make sure that they're A, you can back them up, and B, that people don't go, yeah, I don't know about that, because the economy is you can't really touch the current administration on the economy.
No, absolutely.
I mean, Dow is going to hit 30,000 probably in the next month or two, probably.
Exactly.
You know.
So if it's the case that political marketing knows exactly what it wants the consumers to do, what are some of the things, Linda, that people who are involved in commerce, et cetera, want the consumers of their marketing to do? What are their options when they sit down? They don't want them to go to the polling booth. What do they want? What are some smart things for you to ask people to do in an ad, and when you're going to focus on one thing?
Yep, that's actually a great question. There's several different things that you can ask them to do. You could ask them to make a phone call, which is not that common these days. You can ask them to go to a website and fill out a form. You can ask them to go to, you could also ask them to buy the product. The goal here is, I mean, we call it in our marketing world call to action. So really the idea here is to get the consumer to do one specific task. And that could range from anything. It could be to sign a petition. It could be, in this case, to vote. It could be to buy a product online. So that all varies.
Yeah, you know, the customer journey is really interesting now, because in the era of big analytics, we're tracking every conversion. So we want to know exactly what motivated that person to take the step to go to take the action we want. And we can chart that quite clearly for our customers, which is, I think, really helpful in today's world. Because, and I think we've talked about this before, is that we want to get to the point where we're saying to our customers, your return on investment is, so if you spend every $1 you spend with us, you're going to get $3 back, $4 back. And all of that is understanding the customer journey, kind of like what Linda was talking about.
And that customer journey takes time. I mean, individuals go through a very specific buying pattern. They go through a very specific and personalized analysis when they're making the decision to buy a product. But the number one component here is to become educated. And it's important for marketers to realize that we're responsible for educating the consumer. So at least start the ball rolling on that piece. So whether they go to the website to get more data or go to other websites to get more data, that is a really very important component of this entire marketing journey that Rob is speaking about.
Yeah, and the brand loyalty, whether it's paper towels or the next president of the United States, you're still working to overcome that because people have their own ideas, their own preconceived ideas about what a paper towel should be, what price point it should be, what's the effectiveness of it, is it sustainably sourced, all of these things coming together to form an opinion for the customer.
So one of the other things, and this to me is like at the heart of what marketing is about, that's very apparent, very blatant with political ads, that's not nearly as blatant but just as powerful in traditional commercial ads, is what are the motivators for the person to do what you want. And it's interesting, people often compare two famous political ads as being at the opposite ends of the spectrum. One is the infamous LBJ versus Barry Goldwater Daisy ad.
1, 2, 3, 4.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark, we must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
The theory was that Goldwater was such an anti-communist who's going to take America to war and nuke us all. And then the other one is the sunny, smiling Ronald Reagan 1984 Morning in America ad.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years. This afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will be married. And with inflation at less than half of what it was just 4 years ago, they can look forward with confidence to the future. It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
But if you watch those two ads, there's actually the same motivator in both of them. The first one says, vote for me or he'll blow you up, fear. The other one is, things are great, but they were pretty bad 4 years ago. Do you want to go back? Do you want to lose all this good sunshine? The rain's right around the corner. Don't go back to the rain. It's fear again. We don't like to talk about it, but isn't it the case that the number one motivator for human action is fear, is the avoidance of pain rather than the access of pleasure? Yes?
Absolutely. And that's one of Tom Steyer's, I think, one of his downfalls in the spot right now is that he's saying that, we can work together and we can save the world. That's quite a big claim.
That is, and what does that mean?
What does that mean? Right, exactly.
So to your point about fear, I mean, I think that is a very popular strategy amongst, political candidates, for sure. Definitely fear-based campaigns. And I think we'd all love to see a rosy, smiley, butterfly-based campaign for a political candidate, which will not happen. But from a pure marketing perspective, we will use fear. In fact, we just developed a series of video spots around health and safety issues, mold, asbestos, so on, that are basically fear-based. And the idea there is to really bring that attention to the forefront of someone's mind and get them to act before it becomes a serious problem. And that's some of the tactics that we do take from time to time, Not every time, but it really depends on what the product is, what the service is, and how we can best motivate the prospective customer to make a move and conduct a call to action in some aspect.
Yeah, and I think it's whether, you see it on the local level, you see it on the national level, where people are being forced to make choices, and that fear of loss really comes into play. And, that can be a very powerful motivator if you think it's going to cause you to miss something or cause damage to your family, just by the innuendo of this isn't good for you, this isn't good for your family, this isn't good for your environment. All of those claims are fear-based, and you can easily help motivate people to make the choice to buy the other brand, I think.
Yes. And it is. I also find it very intriguing. I'm just back to that point on the buying cycle and how people actually do buy, and especially in the political arena, because you may just have somebody, vote for Steyer because he's heard his ad 1,000 times, or a Bloomberg because he's heard the ad 1,000 times. But then you have other individuals who really take the time and really research the issues that are out there and how each candidate actually stands on those issues and what they believe in. So there's such a variety of different, to my point, to the educational component of how people make their decisions, a buying decision, which in this case, even though they're voting, it is a buying decision, frankly. So what are the key factors in that?
So what you have in a political ad campaign is what you should have in your commercial campaign. First of all, you have repetition of your name, this thing exists, etc. Then you have what you just said. Some people just buy because they recognize the brand. So you've got that. Other people want to be informed buyers. So what do political ads always tell you? www.voteforjoe.com. There's always a place where you can access more information. So they have that part, and they use traditional web for that. They also use social media, Instagram for that. And then when you go to their website, what do they ask you to do while you're there? Sign up, join, email, whatever. So if you're putting together a marketing plan for your high school fundraiser, there are all four. You need to learn from Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Ronald Reagan. It's all right there. Frequency, name ID, a place where you can get more in depth for the informed or picky or targeted shopper. And then once you've got your hooks in them, do not let them leave without asking them to give you some information that you can then use to market them again. Everything you need to know about any marketing campaign, you can learn from Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg.
I will say, I do, we were discussing this earlier, I think Elizabeth Warren, and I'm not putting any, political judges on anything here, but just as a point of context relating to her campaigns are great. She has a particular campaign called Root Out Corruption. It's geared toward talking to the middle class. It talks about focusing on the rich and powerful, how there's discrimination, how we're trying to return democracy to the people, and there's few paths for the middle class. So what she has done here is she has been very clear and concise about her problem. So she presents a problem, and then she presents another problem, and then she presents another problem. And at the end of the ad, she is very specific, and she states, I know how to fix it, and I know how to get it done, and I'll fight to get it done. It is so simple, anyone can understand it. And I think that that's the type of communication and strategy that really resonates with a lot of target markets, because not everybody is at the same academic level. Not everyone has the same understanding of the political landscape. I think something as simple as that can really go a long way.
Yeah, and considering she's spent less than $4 million total on total ad spend so far, and the fact is that commercial has made such a mark on you that you remember it so well, speaks to the targeting of that ad, and it really, she's done her work on her key messaging and made sure that it appeals to you, because now you remember it.
Right.
That's where I think, where even though you give Steyer and Bloomberg credit for the sheer tonnage and the frequency of the ads, I don't think they have a message and key messaging points that are quite as developed as Elizabeth Warren.
Right. And she is putting, I've just recently read an article that she's putting another 10 million behind some TV and digital to continue to push these campaign concepts that I'm referring to right now, particularly this rooted campaign concept, because they're working. And that's why they're putting more money behind it.
So I want to use Elizabeth Warren to raise two marketing issues for everyone to learn from. You just mentioned one. She puts a problem in her content. And I just wonder how many times when people sit down to think about their marketing plan, have they thought to themselves, what is the problem in my potential customer's life that I can solve? And then you show them the problem, and then you show them the solution. And so I think that's powerful. On the other hand, at one point during the campaign, Senator Warren took a strategy that was designed to appeal to a certain group of voters based on the issue of gender. And that raises the question of, once you decide to target one group, whether it's gender, age, whatever, whoever you're subsetting, are you at risk of losing people not in that subset who would be open to buy your product? It's not a problem targeting something for kids. That's for kids. You know what I mean? It's you're selling toys. But if you're selling something like, say, the Star Wars franchise, which has a huge, and you're going to decide, well, we're going to focus on these people. Well, now you've made the brand look, oh, it's for kids? I thought it was for everybody. Oh, you just told me it's for less than the whole audience. So those are my two questions that the Warren campaign inspires. From a marketing standpoint, what are the dangers? What do you guys think?
So what she's doing is what we in the world of marketing called classic A/B testing, right? She's testing out two messages to see which one's driving more results. So it might turn out that message A is actually driving 3 times as more engagement as the other one, even though it was successful. You'd want to double down on message A. And that's kind of what she's doing right now, is they're all refining their message with 2 different messages and then doubling down on the ones that work, because that's where you're getting your return on investment.
Right.
And that's what we do with clients, by the way, as well.
And I would say, Elizabeth Warren, she knows, and this is key for any company and any product. She knows her product. She knows what she stands for. She knows who she's talking to. She's speaking to the middle class. She knows the size of the market, and she knows the message that she's trying to get to them. And she's doing it in a very clear and concise and simple way. And that's the whole idea of what she is doing. And I think she's done a good job with that piece.
So the flip side of that is Cory Booker, we mentioned earlier, who had access to money early on. He could have been very competitive. And several political analysts have looked at the messaging, and they compare him to President Obama. President Obama was very careful in his campaigning to not become what you might call a candidate for black voters. He wanted to be the candidate for all voters. He knew that was a key to voting. The argument is that at a certain point, Senator Booker said, I'm going to target black voters. They're a significant part of the base of customers, the Democratic primary voters. But in doing so, did he alienate other potential supporters? And that's the point I'm trying to ask is, as you're putting your marketing together, are you thinking about how your choices to target one group, will they just be ignored because you're not even trying? It would be like trying to target a Republican person in a Democratic. You don't care about the Republicans. They're not in your audience. That's smart, excluding them because you're not selling to them. But are you excluding potential customers because you're defining your product as for this purpose and not that purpose, or for this group and not that group? Isn't that something people should think about in their marketing?
It's something you should think about, but like when we do a LinkedIn campaign, right, where we'll send a LinkedIn email to somebody, we know that whoever, say we send it to 1,000 people, 500 open it, and of that, we have a 30% click-through rate, which is outstanding, and that's actually one of the campaigns running right now. So we know that those people are highly engaged, and when they go on the site, their time on the site is through the roof, and so we know it's a good bet to send them back another email that will drive them further engagement and things like that. I see the same thing happening with politics, is that they're constantly developing their base, refining it because they want this group of people that they know for sure are going to go out to the polls and be advocates to others to bring them to the polls. And I think that's really important, whether you're marketing a candidate or you're marketing a can of tomato paste.
So the most effective political marketing campaign I was ever part of, I was working with a guy who's running in like a 27-way ridiculous Republican primary down south. And he was a member of the state legislature, and people in politics knew him, but he was a wonderful man, Henry Brown, but once again, not a fireball of political charisma. How do we break out? There were all these money people, and there were these well-known people. How do we break out? We sent 100,000 likely primary voters a Halloween candy-sized O. Henry bar. And it was a staple to a message about Henry Brown, been around for years, you know him, you trust him, everyone knows good old Henry Brown. Not only did we win the primary, we won without a runoff. And in a large part because people walked in, they looked at 17 names and went, Henry, he sent me a candy bar, I know Henry. That's the power of marketing. We've got more marketing mysteries to solve coming up here on the Marketing Murder Mystery Podcast from the Millennium Agency. Now it's time for our Marketing 101 segment. We try to provide a tip for those of you who either handle the marketing for your business or suddenly find yourself in the marketing end of the building. And here to help us is Allison DeLeo, Senior Account Manager at Millennium Agency. Hello, Allison.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Unfortunately, I'm great, but people who are trying to market on Facebook at the moment aren't. What's going on?
Well, I am one of those people. So I'm currently running a campaign for one of my clients on Facebook. And with the political season kind of in full swing, I'm running into a lot of, algorithm problems with Facebook in terms of rejecting my ads. So I have a lot of ads I'm continuously trying to promote for my client, and I keep getting the rejection notification from Facebook saying, we've targeted your ad as political or a social issue, and we can no longer, allow you to run that ad.
And just to be clear for people, but if you think that the political or social is just, vote for Joe or, I'm pro-life or whatever. No, there are a lot of issues. There are a lot of ads that don't seem to be political or social that get picked up, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, this is just an image I'm trying to boost, for example, and it's a funny image that has nothing to do with political or social issues, and for some reason it's just being tagged by the algorithm that it is. So I'm trying to work with keywords too. We had some keywords that were kind of potentially political related in terms of saying a department in the New Hampshire, agriculture, and I've been trying to get rid of that, but it's still being tagged as some sort of issue, so it won't even allow me to touch that ad anymore on Facebook.
So it's like a state name or a reference to something that could be part of an issue, a word that might appear in the name of some federal or state department. Suddenly it's like, well, no, I don't mean it in that context. What are you doing? And you can't run your ads.
No, that's exactly it, yeah. So running into that problem.
So what's the solution?
So Facebook's pretty good at telling you and kind of walking you through the process. They require two-factor authentication. So you kind of have to have a code to allow you to even post anything. They require you to tell them the country and origin of where you're going to be posting your posts. And then you have to add in personal information. So for example, I had to take Linda's license number and Linda's address and make sure it matched the Facebook and and so they can see who's posting these posts. So it's not some random person with some weird agenda trying to, sway people into political action or some sort of thing. So that's the process. It takes about a week too. So,
and of course, the fact that people know this, Linda's real name is Lindowski Robinov from the Soviet Union is a problem at the current moment. But for although it didn't hurt with the Trump campaign, we don't know. Anyway, just kidding. But I want to ask you something while you're here. So the good news is Facebook is very communicative, cooperative. This is how they make their money. So they will answer your questions. There's a procedure. If you just go through the pain in the neck procedure, you get through. Do you have to do that for each individual ad, or can you get kind of certified as we know who you are, you've passed it's like the thing when you travel in the airport and they have the extra line, you've been cleared as a traveler. Does it work like that?
Yeah, so it's just certifying your profile on Facebook. So once they can authenticate that you're who you are and you're doing what you're saying you're doing, that your whole profile is now okay and approved by Facebook to run any sort of ad, whether that be political or social issue. So once you're approved, any ad can then be run and not rejected by Facebook.
What are some of the common mistakes that people trying to use social media, Facebook in particular for marketing, just tend to make? Give us a couple of tips if someone's thinking, I'm going to put up a Facebook ad for my whatever, auto shop. What are just some common mistakes?
I think one of the mistakes is posting too much. I think when you're starting to give people multiple different messages all the time, every day, then people are just going to get tired of hearing what you have to say and seeing your name all the time. So with this client specifically, I'm not posting every day. I'm trying to spread out the messages and, being really direct in what I say. I want them to take a specific action. And I think once you kind of post too much and you're giving them multiple different messages, your target audience is going to get confused and kind of just lost on what you're trying to promote or say.
So I was expecting you to say always use Baby Yoda.
Well, that's a good one.
Allison DeLeo, thanks so much for helping us with our Marketing 101 today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Marketing Murder Mystery Podcast from the Millennium Agency, courtesy of Linda Faneras and Rob Atkinson. You can find out more about them at mill.agency. I'm your host, Michael Graham.